Hello and welcome to the Career Success Podcast. I'm Jason Connolly. If you're a regular listener, it's great to have you back, but if you're new, welcome to the show. Every week we speak to the biggest names in business all across the globe. We talk about their stories, the lessons learned and their success habits and what they do in order to ensure they stay at the top of their game. Listen and find out hints and tips to help you in the world of business and your career. Practical advice to help you in your career from those who've made it. In this episode, I'm delighted to be joined by Emma Willis MBE from London. Emma launched her shirt brand in 1990 with her own manufacturing and a shop in London's Jermyn Street. In 2010, she founded Style for Soldiers in response to the severity and number of casualties returning from Afghanistan. Regularly visiting the military rehabilitation hospital over 10 years, she measured for and donated her bespoke shirts to the patients. The charity now partners with NHS Veterans Trauma Network and gives the largest reunions for injured service personnel all throughout the country. In 2017, Emma was awarded an NBE for entrepreneurship and her championing of British manufacturing. And in 2019, she was invited to Downing Street by the then PM Teresa May to receive a Points of Light award. Emma, thanks so much for joining me on this episode.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me, Jason.
So before we kind of talk about brand and what you've kind of done, it'd be really interesting to go back in time to how it all kind of started for you. If you could take us on that journey.
Well, I started off, I was very interested in the arts from a child onwards. So my first dream was to be a writer, actually. And I started at UCL, University College London, studying English. I then spotted people wandering past with easels and paintbrushes, which was my other passion, and sort of felt restlessly like perhaps actually art was more. I felt more strongly about, and I was finding the academic side of the studying English. I just suddenly thought to myself, I think it really was art. So I actually went across to my professor, spoke to him, and he let me transfer to the art school, which was the Slade Fine Art School. I had to have an interview. I showed my work. So I went to the Slade, which I thought at the time was absolutely my dream come true, to be studying fine art. But I'd only actually stayed there a year. I didn't do enough work, and I quite rightly was asked to leave and give my place to somebody more worthwhile. So I was now very much in London, paying a rent, needing to pay the bills. And I ended up working for a company selling clothes door to door. And
Oh, wow.
this was far from what my dream was. I was about 18 years old at this stage. But I actually found that I could sell. I wasn't shy of selling. And I did this for this company for about, I think it was about 6 months. And then one of the people that actually I was selling to had a shirt company. And he asked me if I would like to come and work for him selling clothes, selling the shirts to help with their business, we were in a recession at the time and it wasn't going very well. And he asked me to come and set up a direct selling part of his business. So he set me up in an office in Ham Yard in Soho, which is now much, much smarter with a lovely hotel there. And we set up a business called Leg and Pritchard. And then, which I went to one of the top shirt makers and we had beautiful shirts made. And then we sold them and I brought on friends of mine as well. And we set up a business direct selling shirts, pretty nice shirts all around London. I did that for about from 84 to 86. I then moved on for various reasons and I went to manage a lovely little shop in the Burlington Arcade called James Drew, which was beautiful women's shirt. And I did that for about a year. I then met a very talented Spanish lady, a wonderful couture maker, Emily Pastrana, when I was working in this shop and managing the shop. And we set up a little business. I was sort of craving to have my own business by this stage. And we set up a little business called Couture Alterations. And we did very, very high-end alterations. And we would do them for beautiful shops like Emmanuel, who made Princess Diana's wedding dress. And we did that for about a year. And then I had an approach from somebody called Phil Coulter, from his manager. He was a huge singer-songwriter, doing a big tour, a big world tour. And he had heard that I had a shirt business, which I'd actually no longer doing. And he asked me to make shirts for him. I met up with his manager and they wanted me to make 24 shiny white batwing shirts for him to wear for his tour. And I couldn't resist that. That was a lovely order and I could do that. So Emily and I set about making these. Emily made these beautiful bat-wing shiny shirts, which actually took me back into shirts again. And I thought, really, this is a much better business than the alterations. 1989, I set up Emma Willis Handmade Shirts. And then, yes, so which then became the shop, opening the shop much later in 1999. Yes, so I did that for 10 years.
Wow, what an interesting story, and especially how you kind of came to find yourself, working in these businesses for other people, and then that kind of led on to another thing of you starting your own business.
Mm.
At that time when you were kind of having those thoughts about starting out for yourself, did you feel quite kind of confident in your ability, having been there with other people, or did it feel quite, nerve wracking and alien at the time, or was that order kind of, the thing that really got you off the ground?
It was the thing that it was just the thing that made me alerted me to the thing that was going to make better money than doing alterations. I'd say it was all a sort of rather desperate scrabble at the time. I mean, I was still loving the arts. I was singing in a band, I was drawing, I was writing. So at this stage, everything was really a way of just funding the thing that I really at this stage still had a passion for, which was much more the pure arts. But it is very hard to make money in the arts, whether it's singing in a band or painting. I was also doing portraits of people. So it was very much led by the thing that paid the bills. So, and I think because did love the independence of working for myself and being able to do all these other things, at the same time keeping my sort of passion for the creative things going at the same time, that took me back to setting up my own business. It was that's it. The big move, the fearsome thing was opening a shop, which doing that 10 years later, that was the big leap, because it was a big financial leap, and that was
Yeah.
properly raising money and putting in investment.
And where did you first open the shop? Has it always been in the same location, or?
Yes, it's always been in the German Street. So after I'd been doing the business very much, I traveled a lot. When I had my business, just selling very much direct to my customers, I traveled to Paris, which was I had a friend there, and I developed a customer base there, which was just a beautiful city to go to, and I knew that there was potential customers there. And then we had the recession in the UK in 1991, and that forced me to go to New York, which was everybody said, Emma, people stopped buying in London at that stage. In the UK, people were really suffering under the recession, didn't have the spare money, and so I went to New York. So that pushed me again. It was often the things that have happened have been just because out of being pushed in it, because you lose an opportunity somewhere, so you had to find an opportunity somewhere else.
Going to say it's interesting that though, because you kind of say it as kind of bouncing to something else, but in a way that's kind of you being an entrepreneur and finding another avenue to make money.
I think it is really, Jason. That's what, pushes you to do
Mm.
it. That's why I think, having to earn your own money, has got to be the drive. And you don't necessarily like what you're doing from the beginning. You're probably dreaming of something completely different, but that necessity pushes you on and keeps you sticking
Mm.
at something.
That's
Yes.
really interesting. So kind of talk us through when you started the shop. You obviously went through that time of kind of the recession, and sort of tell us how it's kind of evolved over the years and how the brand has kind of built into what it is today.
Yes, so I opened the shop in 1999. I decided I had to put roots down,
Mm.
and I went up to London and I went to Jermyn Street. I've been doing bespoke shirts all this time, so it was very much that's the area of London, and the bespoke area for shirts is Jermyn
Mm.
Street. So I went to that. I went there, and I was amazed to see a perfect shop there. It's just as you come in off St James's, the perfect size, the perfect position. And it would be the first, and is the first shop in Jermyn Street after the lovely cigar shop Davidoff. And so my heart started to race, and I thought, well, I've just got to do this now. There's no turning back. So I took on the shop in 1999, raised the money through actually I wrote to my 5 best customers who'd been buying from me for the last 10 years and asked, who would be able to give me funding to back the business. And I was offered small amounts by, little bits from here and there, but one of my American banker customers said he'd back me, but he wanted to do it solo rather than doing a mixture of backers. So we're still very happy business partners now. And he invested, and we opened up the shop. We decorated it beautifully with really craftsmen actually from the country in where I knew some fantastic carpenters and stonemasons and things. And we just really created a beautiful little shop to reflect the craftsmanship of the shirts too. And it was, yeah, it's amazing. The first day you open a shop and someone walks in and buys, it's quite an amazing feeling. And it really has been fantastic. I mean, I'm so glad I did put down the roots. It's an amazing retail area. There've been ups and downs, of course, and the area actually was much more sleepy and very traditional when I first arrived there. As they say, the expression "old money," but old money doesn't necessarily like putting their hands in their pockets. And so,
Yeah, yeah.
despite it being sort of the very sort of grand, very traditional and sort of posh area with all the men's clubs, but actually really what buzzed up the area and was where they started the hedge fund business, and a lot of hedge fund little offices started to spring up, and that really brought money and youth and vibrancy to the area again.
Mm. And what a fascinating story that you went to your customers. It's kind of an ingenious idea in itself, not something that, a lot of people would think to do, to actually go to their customers and say, do you want to support me? But, what a lovely story. And, lovely that
Mm.
you went into business with someone who ultimately was, a big fan of your work anyway. And I've
Mm.
seen the video on your website about it in regards to the shop and what it looks like, and it looks absolutely like a beautiful setup. I can see why it was so appealing at the time. And
Mm.
even to look at kind of the videos in terms of how the shirts are made and kind of the craftsmanship behind it,
Mm.
it must be something that you're incredibly proud of. What's your kind of thoughts about the brand now being where you are in the current day? And do you still get the same passion for, what you do as you did in those early days of launching the shop?
I absolutely do, actually, Jason. And having the shop did that satisfied my creative side, so I stopped messing around, singing and drawing and things, and because it made something very concrete that I could
Mm,
create something physical and something beautiful to create. And the manufacturing side is always been incredibly important to me because it's well, I had a small workroom in southeast London in New Cross when I was in London for many years, and then we've opened a much bigger manufacturing in Gloucester now. But to be able to create to get the work as in to give to support the craftspeople in these lovely traditional skilled crafts that we want to last forever, but you have to, you've got to provide the business for them and the sales to them. So there's this nice circular thing, and if they make a beautiful product, which I can't, if I haven't got their beautiful product, I've got nothing to sell. And if I don't provide orders for them, they've got nothing to make. So you have this lovely symbiotic relationship, which I've enjoyed with my tiny little factory with just 5 people in London, now on a much bigger scale in
mm.
Gloucester. And when you're in sales, that I ultimately first hadn't wanted to go into sales at all. But if you are in sales, it's such a different thing if you're selling something you're proud of and you genuinely feel that the customer is going to benefit, is going to enjoy, it's going to bring pleasure to them. I wouldn't have wanted to go into sales if I was selling something that I felt I was pulling the wool over someone's eye, or selling something I wasn't proud to be associated with.
I totally agree, and I'm in the business of selling people of all things. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think you've got to absolutely love the product that you sell. Otherwise, I couldn't be in sales either. So,
Yeah.
I totally hear you and agree with you on that point. So, with the manufacturing side of things, obviously, it's great to see something that's British, and something that hasn't been, given over to another country or it is coming in as an import. But how do you kind of have this factory that you've been with all these years, or is it kind of your people who are there, or how does that process work?
We've built it. So when I decided to move it to Gloucester, I did put an advertisement in the local newspaper and
Oh, right.
advertised for seamstresses and cutters. And I had a fantastic response just from a small group of people, but it was enough. A little shirt team came to see me. And they didn't know anything about me. I didn't know anything about them. We all took a blind leap of faith together. They'd worked together. So we set up a smaller place in Gloucester, and that's how it began. So, and my supervisor and the main seamstress, Kathmia, is the most phenomenal seamstress, and she's been sewing for 30 years, and has such, I mean,
Wow.
her standards are so, she's such an incredible seamstress. And she teaches all our young people. So now I like to employ young people, giving people an opportunity in the creative industry. And so I'm very much grown it by employing young people who are local in Gloucester. Some they've come at 16, 17, 18, 19, but for young, and they don't even need to have sewed, even if they've got the passion. I feel they're going to have the work ethic, and I feel they're genuinely creative people who really want to learn. We can train somebody from scratch, which is a really positive thing. That's when I realized we had a future in growing a manufacturing business, because people are always trying to deter with British manufacturing. There's been so much deterring. Oh, it's too expensive. You can't train. Young people aren't interested. And you just ignore all that and try. And it's actually turned out that yes, young people absolutely are interested in creative working, making things with their hands. It's so good for mental well-being as well. Creative, if you are creative. And you can have a new manufacturing model where you're not just talking about speed, and each person is an individual who's developing their creativity, and you don't hurry them. You teach them that it's all about the beauty of what they're making, the quality of what they're making, their work. That's the value, and then their speed will come, and it does come. So it's been really rewarding to grow it.
It's an absolutely beautiful story to hear that. I think that vocational kind of careers really seem to have taken a back seat over the last decade, and there's now
Mm.
such an influx of people kind of thinking university is the only way to go for them. I never went down that route. I left school and well performed magic, not the
Mm.
regular career, but
Yeah.
I certainly wasn't, academia wasn't for me at the time.
Mm.
And what a beautiful story to hear that there are people out there, and I totally agree with you. I think there's young people out there that do want to go down these vocational and creative routes, but there's just it's difficult, and with kind of the culture that we've got now of everything being manufactured abroad, it's great to hear success stories of businesses like yours which are still manufacturing in this country. So
Mm.
to kind of talk about what you've done with Style for Soldiers, you founded that in 2010, and that was in response to the severity and a number of casualties returning from Afghanistan. Tell us about the charity and how it all kind of got started. And it's a beautiful charity from all I've read into it. But tell us more about it.
Well, thank you, Jason. Well, I heard a program in 2008, and it was a documentary on Radio 4, interviewing young injured service personnel in the military rehabilitation hospital in Epsom, Headley Court. And I was just driving along, and I was just absolutely struck by these interviews. They were two young men. One had lost his vision, one had lost both legs. They had, been out serving in Afghanistan, and they were very young. You could tell. You could also tell that they had not had amazing education, and they were so brave. But the only thing that you could hear any fear in their voice was about their future career if they lost their jobs in the forces. And you could, it felt that seemed it. That was, and so I was so moved by their courage, and yet I could tell how you couldn't imagine how hard it was going to be to start a new career. I could tell I just learned in that short time how their service was actually much more than just a job. It was their friends, family, self-esteem, and purpose, and that had all been taken away. So I thought, what can I do? And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And about 2 weeks later, I was on the tube in London, and I thought, well, I can make a shirt. At least I can make a bespoke shirt to fit anyone. So I'll try and go and give them a shirt. So I did that. I took a year to get into Headley Court because it's understandably got very high security, and also to make sure that whatever I was doing was for the right reason.
Mm.
And I went there, and so after my first visit, I was invited back to come, whenever I wanted to, and I went every 3 months for about 8 years, and then for 10 years I went there, but very, very regularly for the years that were the height of the casualties coming back. So 2008, 9, 10, 11 were really were very bad periods of many, many casualties. But it was so rewarding because I was amazed. I thought it would be something that I could do as a gift, but that I would like to do, but I didn't really think it would have any particular positive impact for them when they had so much else to cope with. It would be, such a superficial thing. But I was so pleased to notice so early on. I saw, I was showing them different colour blues and stripes and checks and things, and they got so engrossed. They're sitting there with these terrible injuries, and yet they could really transport themselves into, how am I going to look in this shirt? What kind of blue shall I have? And what am I going to wear it for? And you could see they could project themselves forward and think about going out, wearing a new shirt, imagining themselves on a date or going to go out with friends or whatever. So that was just so good to realize that they were this had given them some pleasure. Yeah, so that's how it all started, and led on from shirts to bespoke walking sticks, suits, shoes. I got lots of other fashion brands involved who are so amazingly supportive. M&S have given over 750 suits. The brand have given over 300 suits. Russell and Bromley have given hundreds of pairs of shoes. James Lock hats in St James's have given hundreds of hats, particularly for people with head injuries. That's been wonderful.
Wow. And you're responsible for all of that. What an incredible thing.
They're so inspiring. When my first visit there, well, first the program and then the visit, and there's just no turning back. There's what sacrifices they make, but they go to serve their country, to defend their country, to serve their country with such sort of patriotism. And I actually had advice from somebody who was a customer who advises charities, and he said, you should try and register as a charity because you'll find it much easier to fundraise, and then you've got to do events, and you've got to show that you've got to introduce the beneficiaries to the benefactors. And I thought, oh, that all sounds such a lot, but we had the first party,
Yeah.
and it was amazing because you just introduce the people that had moved me, so the young injured service personnel, and then you introduce those to the potential supporters, and they do the work for you. They jump up on the stage and do it for you.
And I can imagine the impact that must have had on you being in, that hospital at the time, during the height of everything that was going on in Afghanistan. Must have been, I can understand why that was a driver. And, I think you
Mm.
say it's a shirt and it's superficial, but by the sounds of it, it really sounded like it allowed them at the time to kind of look forward. And, that
Mm.
shirt was kind of something that allowed them to think about, well, what's next in life and where am I going to kind of go? And that was the
Yeah.
key to that. So, that's fantastic. And you've
Mm.
been having these events now. It's a regular thing that happens every year, I believe.
It is, Jason, and I'd love you to come to one day. It would be, yes, they are the most amazing parties because it is the biggest, as you kindly said in your introduction, they are the
Mm,
biggest parties now for injured service personnel. And
wow.
everyone brings their partner as well, and we give £100 to the partners to dress up as well. So, because otherwise it wouldn't be fair. And
Oh, lovely.
they are really, really, and they're very important. So everything that we've added on to with the charity has been led by what you see as the next stage of life, what they need. So
Mm,
people can easily, become isolated or just really miss their friends, their forces friends. And
yeah.
particularly to get together with people who are in a similar situation with injuries to cope with, physical and psychological often as well. So it's a really therapeutic thing to get together. I have had people saying that they benefit more from the parties than they have from, more traditional forms of therapy, because just to be with
Mm.
like-minded people again is just so beneficial. So therefore we had to not just have one, so then we have a summer dinner as well. And then we have a race day because somebody offered me a race day at Newmarket with a lovely box. So we're on the finishing line. So, and then this year they offered me York races, so the jockey club and
Oh,
the two
wow.
race courses, York. And so all these parties keep growing because people keep offering other lovely opportunities, and I can't say no. And they are
Yeah.
and we have a big
And
one
after
for families
lockdown,
now
I can
too.
imagine there's going to be a packed schedule. You're obviously sort of building these events up. So I can imagine it's going to be an action-packed calendar for you once we finally move out of this time.
Absolutely, Jason. Yeah, they do miss them, and the family one is at Woburn Safari Park, which the Duke of Bedford gives, and that's a wonderful one for the children too, which we did manage to do this year. We just got it into that nice little bit of freedom in the middle of the summer.
That sounds great. And what a worthwhile cause, and I think it's a charity that I absolutely think is worthwhile. So
Mm,
congratulations to you and for the success and everything that it seems to be doing.
thank
To
you.
talk about your MBE in 2017, what an
Mm.
honour, and how did that feel? How did that all kind of come about?
Well, it was a huge honour, obviously, and a complete and utter surprise. I was in my local town shopping, and
Mm.
Jade, who runs my shop, called me to say she had a letter that looked rather interesting, and I said, "Open it, Jade," and it
Not
said,
your
"I
usual
think
junk mail that's
no."
coming from the electric company.
Exactly. I think it said highly confidential on the front. And
Right.
Jade, that was so Jade opened it. She read it to me, and I said, "Oh, Jade, I can't quite believe that. You have to keep that a big secret." And yeah, so it really was. It's the most extraordinary surprise out of the blue, and an incredible. The ceremony is absolutely incredible, which I took my parents to, and my husband. My parents have been such huge influences in my life. They've been incredible parents. It was absolutely lovely to be able to take them as well.
Because you have to be nominated for an MBE. That's how it all kind of comes about, isn't it?
Yes,
Am
and
I
it's such a
correct?
mystery. Yes, that's right. Is you have to
Oh, so
somebody.
you still don't know
I
who
still
nominated
don't know.
you?
I have a little suspicion, but they haven't said. I have because they have there's quite a lot of you have to propose, and there's quite a lot of work behind it. So you have to put
Yeah,
in.
I've
So
heard.
I owe something to somebody, quite a lot to somebody.
I don't know if I'd still be able to keep it a secret. I think it would the cat would have come out of the bag by now if it was me who'd done that and nominated someone.
I
But,
agree. It's very modest of them.
what what a wonderful story. And what continues to motivate you kind of in all that you do? Has your kind of your motivator changed over the years, or kind of what keeps you kind of excited and waking up and driving things forward in your brand every
Well, I
day?
think right now it's getting over the getting through this and the other side,
Oh,
and coming out strong and healthy the other side, to protect
mm,
everybody's jobs and to make sure, our wonderful company that is made up of all the people that work with me, that we absolutely, we've been through a few challenges. This is a record breaker, but it's creating a happy, really happy, lovely company where, and creating jobs and creating that company that I can walk in Gloucester to our lovely house where we have the business, and I
mm.
I feel very proud to walk into that and feel the buzz and the happiness and the creativity, and so that's what drives me really. I would like to, we were very much on a growth before this. We're fine, we're absolutely fine, but before it was just, I could employ people. If
Mm.
somebody fabulous knocked on my door, I could create a job for them pretty well. If
Yeah.
I was, whereas now we have to, everybody has to rein in. So I want to get it back to where I very much can think
It's
of growing
tough.
as far as
Yeah.
growing, employing more people.
And it sounds like, a big part of the Emma Willis brand is about giving people that opportunity, which, is just fabulous. And I must also, I've just completely skimmed over the fact that you also won the Points of Light Award, which you was awarded by the then Prime Minister Theresa May. Another accolade, which is just,
Mhm.
it's given to recognise outstanding UK volunteers, I believe. So, congratulations on
Mhm.
that. I was about to mention that when
Thank
we were
you.
talking about the charity work, but there's so many things I want to talk about. I completely moved on, but what a fantastic honour as well. What advice would you give, Emma, to maybe people that want to get into the fashion industry or want to get into kind of the creative industry? Because now is an extremely difficult time for anybody who is a young person, kind of at that point in their life. But what advice would you give to people, kind of being where you are now?
Well, I think actually it's a much easier, much better time, and much more hope as far as talking about in the last sort of few years. If you want to get into the fashion business or as a designer or set up your own brand, because it was impossible when I was younger, because it was too expensive to advertise, you had to have a physical space, you had to have a place, a studio or something to operate from. It was very, very difficult. It's very expensive. Whereas there's a lot of young people now setting up their own fashion brands, online fashion brands, and having their own website, doing all their own social media, really cleverly navigating the whole world of celebrity endorsements and influencers and all this side of things, which I'm not great at. But I've seen a lot with my children's friends who are in their sort of early 20s. There's so many entrepreneurs popping up. I think they could
Mm.
probably teach me more about how you set up a fashion brand right now, because it is, I think that there's a lot of opportunity. It's obviously very difficult at the moment, but everything's going to go online. I mean, we've now all we're dependent. We've put so much into our online business, and it's really great and so much great about it. It just slashes your overheads, and you have this amazing marketing tool at your hands for free with social media. So, I think if you learn, you've just, you've got to put all those skills. Obviously, you've got to have you've got to learn, you've got to be good at photography, you've got to have good IT skills, you've got to be able to create something beautiful. I mean, as far as the creative side of it, I think that our British manufacturing business is going to go from strength to strength in the next 10 years, because it mixes very well. Technology and an old-fashioned craft works terribly well, because we can now show, when we're cutting a customer's shirt, for instance, we can, so if somebody buys 5 shirts in Japan, we then make his pattern. We do everything by hand. We do, as far as making paper patterns, and we cut by hand. His name will be written on the pattern. We then can do a little video clip of Kelly cutting out his pattern, and we can just send that over to him saying, your shirt's being cut at the moment, it'll be ready in 3 weeks time. And that
Oh, I
is
love that.
so exciting to customers. It's so exciting, and you've just got to keep thinking,
Well,
well,
I'm
what can
excited just
you
hearing
know
it.
and it's the whole thing of
How
where your milk
wonderful.
came from when you sit down to eat your cereal. You just don't
Yeah.
think, and you could go on a virtual tour of back, in the cow with the field, in the field with the cow, and then the milk, and that's what you can do so easily now. And so it's really exciting. So if you're making your own clothes, you're making your own shoes, or you're
Mm.
making whatever, you can directly show what you're doing to your customers. And it's the fact of all this, this dreadful pandemic, with all our borders closing and all those, incredibly depressing things, and impossible to
Mm.
imagine how it is for travel industry and things. But I do think that it could easily help manufacturing, because it's a lot easier to buy online now from within your own country, because
Yeah.
of everything. I mean, it's, things will get better. I think the creative industry will thrive, and goes brilliantly with hand in hand with technology. People don't want mass production now. They want responsible, sustainable. Young people want to know, where they're buying from. And it is fast fashion. It really does seem as if fast fashion is on the way out, because of the people's,
It's
yeah.
getting a lot of very bad press at the moment, and I agree with you. I think British manufacturing is going to come back. I think people want to know where their stuff's come from, and equally they want to buy quality. You buy stuff
Mm,
that's cheap; it doesn't last. You buy an Emma Willis shirt, and I can imagine it's still in your wardrobe 20 years later. Well, it wouldn't be in mine with the way I'm
mm.
putting on weight through lockdown. It would have unfortunately long ago become too small. But then again, I'd be back at Emma Willis buying another one, much larger. So, but I do agree with you when it comes to British manufacturing. I think people want quality, and I think, and I think the thing is, the more British manufacturing there is, also, the more competitive it will be, and I think it's all going to be great. And I think, we need to
Mm,
move away from this import cheap labour culture that we've got overseas. So it's great to hear the story, and I do agree with you, especially with social media as well. I think it's given people a platform more than ever. And if you're good and know what you're doing, it's been very kind to me, social media. But Emma,
great.
thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. It's a fascinating story, and especially everything you told us about Style for Soldiers, what a worthwhile cause. And I wish you all the best of luck moving forward. Thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you very much, Jason. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you so much. And if anyone wants to find out more about Emma and Emma Willis, you can go to emmawillis.com. That was Emma. I'm Jason Connolly. This is the Career Success Podcast. Until next time, goodbye.